Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Battle Gamer, and we're getting back. We're getting back, and we're getting to the end of the Why This Class is Awesome series. And honestly, it did better than I ever really expected. We're down to the last, three classes, right? Four classes. We got Magus, next is Wizard, followed by Rogue and Fighter. So four more overall. And while that does seem like a lot, there's just a lot of classes. If you saw my class tier list, that was me talking very fast about what every class offered, and that still took an hour and a half video for like everything. So yeah, I'm surprised how well the series is done, and I'm very excited for the next projects that we'll be coming up to next. I'm very excited to get this done, and I don't know, I might do like an actual tutorial series, because if you didn't know, and if it hasn't been clear for the last, like, I don't know, 12 videos, these are not instruction videos on how to play classes. These are just me getting excited about some of the more fun features that each of these classes offer, and not only that, but to tell those features to all of you who want to play the game, so that you can get excited to try a class out, where you can hear something and be like, oh, I didn't know that, and let me try it. So overall, I'm glad that this series has gone well. I'm sure that it could have been done better, but overall, like, this has really pushed the channel into a level of success I never expected, at least not this fast. So yeah. And why don't we get to the topic of this video and get on with it, shall we? This week we're talking about the Magus. So the Magus is a true martial class. It's got a 8 plus con health. It uses strength and dex as its class trait or class attribute. Key ability score, that's what it's called. It's like never used for like anything but key ability score, which is really good. The Magus is a class that's really good. You do kind of have to have a very specific build, and you're going to be trading some strengths for others. One of the big things about the Magus is that they're a martial class that uses spells in tandem, which means that they do have to have a good amount of con, strength, or dex, and intelligence to cast their spells effectively. It's made easier with some of their features, which we'll get into here in a moment, but one of the things about the Magus that I really enjoy is that it changes up the play style of both martial and magic casters. You actually get a good hybrid style out of the Magus, and I think it's actually better than prior editions of Magus as far as like mechanically how it actually plays. I feel legitimately like I'm playing a very different class style when I'm playing a Magus. So I think it's really, really good. But let's go ahead and get into some of their features, shall we? The first feature that comes up is the Arcane Cascade. It's the general stance of the Magus, and it's kind of where a lot of their abilities stem from. The Arcane Cascade is very simple. It really just adds extra damage based on the last type of damage a spell you cast used, or if it's a buffing spell, it changes the damage based on the type of spell that you use. And when you go into the stance, you activate different features from your hybrid studies, but we'll get into that part a little bit later. What I really like about it is this not only enhances the Magus's kind of like elemental focus, or like the great thing about Magus, and I think what Magus does better than most classes, is they can affect enemy weaknesses easier. Once they find it out, they can use a spell, change into a stance, and then their attacks will continuously do extra damage. It started off at 1 extra damage, which is not a whole bunch, and I do believe it gets to up to 3 damage, barring some of the hybrid studies and what they do, and that stacks with weapon specialization. So Magus overall hits a little bit harder than other martial classes does, at least on a per strike basis. It's not including classes that can strike a bazillion times, or classes like the Barbarian that has rage damage on top of it, And honestly, nothing really beats a barbarian's rage damage. They get a dumb amount of damage. But still, the Arcane Cascade is really interesting, and they even have feats that further augment it, one of which I'll get to a little bit later. But let's talk about the one thing all Magus players are excited for, and that's Spell Strike. Now, Spell Strike's really complicated, and it has a lot of stipulations. I'm not going to get into that in this video, because otherwise this would be a 40-50 minute video. Spell Strike's just really complicated. So I'm just going to put up all the rules here, but just know that generally how it works, barring feats, is as long as the spell you cast with the strike has an attack roll, you just strike with the weapon, and if the weapon hits, the spell hits as well. And if there's any tertiary effects that require them to make a, like a spell save, you still use your spell save as well. You still use the spell DC that you have. And I like this. I think Spell Strike's really good. It's a very efficient action because it combines a strike action with any 1 or 2 action spell cast. More often than not, you're getting an action benefit out of this. So action economy wise, it's pretty good. Not only that, but this kind of helps solve one of the Magus' issues when it comes to how they stat themselves out. Because whether the spell part of the strike hits based on your attack, it makes your spell accuracy based on your strength or dex. That's really good. That's a really, really good feature, and it makes it so that the Magus doesn't necessarily have to focus super hard into their intelligence. And in fact, there's actually plenty of builds for Magus out there where they don't have really much intelligence at all in the build. They don't need it because the strength and dex, affects the accuracy, and the spells either just do base damage or they're buff spells that don't require a spell DC. The only thing that it does affect is if someone attempts to counteract your spells in some way or fashion. That in that case, having a lower spell DC does suck, but that does not happen that often in Pathfinder 2e, so it's not anything you'd have to worry about. Another thing about the Spell Strike that is interesting is that when you use a Spell Strike, you have to recharge your Spell Strike. You either take an action to, re-energize your sword or whatever weapon you have, or you use a conflict spell. And this is absolutely amazing. The conflict spells are the focus spells that the Magus uses, essentially. They're spells that do oftentimes more combat-y things, but not always. And when you use it, the Magus gets their recharge for their spell strike. This makes it so that the Magus, in practice, is actually mixing martial abilities with spells. You go in and you strike with your weapon with a spell attached, and then you cast a spell after that to recharge the strike. And a lot of the times, the Magus has a very variable turn when it comes to their turns in combat, and they have to decide what they can use and can't use. The Magus is a reduced spellcaster. They only ever get 6 spell slots at most. They don't even get 6 spell slots until level 7, I believe, when they get Studious Spell. And 2 of those spells, the Studious Spells, are from a very small list. The Magus is really good because they're like a wizard. They get a spell book and they can add spells to that spell book. It gives them a wide arsenal that they can slot in every day. And that's really, really good. Even though they have reduced spell slots, they still can get some utility, or they can just charge up some really big hits for their spell strike. It's really good overall. And then the Studious Spells comes from a smaller list that is enhanced by the hybrid studies, and they're most often utility spells or buff spells like Spider Climb or True Strike. It really makes the Magus feel like they are a true mix between martial and magic. I think they play very interestingly, and I really, really like how they've mixed their playstyle. There's a very definitive playstyle that other classes just don't have. I like the Magus a lot, and I definitely recommend you check it out. Even if some of the rules are a little bit complicated, once you get beyond the initial hurdles and you have your standard go-to spell actions, you're pretty set when it comes to the Magus. I mentioned before the hybrid studies. So the hybrid studies are how the Magus essentially changes their fighting style based on certain weapon or style based principles. For instance, Inexorable Iron, which is probably one of my favorites, is a two-handed. You have to be wielding a two-handed weapon. And when you go into Arcane Cascade, you gain temporary hit points equal to half your level. It's really good. It's a really solid kind of stance style, and it makes the Magus very much focused on going in and being in the center of combat. You have essentially more HP in the end because you get this every round as long as you're in Arcane Cascade. That's a really good feature. It's so good, in fact, that depending on what stage of the game you are, you can get a lot of extra health, like easily like 50 HP more just by, surviving the combat, and the enemies have to get through that. And if you have some kind of resistance to the damage, it makes it even better because not only is the damage reduced, but you also have those temporary hit points that have to eat through first before they actually get to your hit points. Inexorable Iron, along with a lot of the other studies, have certain feats associated with them and a conflict spell. Now, I'm not going to get into the conflict spells. They're actually pretty good, a lot of them. But again, they'd make the video very long if I had to go through each one in each style. Just know that Inexorable Iron has a lot more a lot more feats and conflict spells based on area attacking and, improving their tankiness and their juggernaut-like abilities even more. It's a really good hybrid study. Laughing Shadow is a very interesting sound. While most of them are tied to a particular weapon type or style, this one is more like a dueling style. You have a one-handed weapon in one hand, and you have nothing in your other hand. And not only that, but this particular hybrid study gets additional bonuses based on if they're unarmored or not, because you get a speed bonus of +5 if they have armor, or +10 if they don't have armor. It makes this particular hybrid study based on being very mobile, being very bounce around. A lot of their feats and conflict spells are based on, teleporting or tricking people. It's a really fun style overall. And not only that, but if the enemy is flat-footed and you're in Arcane Cascade, you do additional damage with your Arcane Cascade bonus. I think it increases to 3 points, 5, and then eventually gets to 7 if you have the greater weapon specialization. So that does add a lot more extra damage. And again, it's a very much like a skirmisher style build. I think it's a really fun one. I think what a lot of these Magus styles are like is they change your gameplay even further. While Inexorable Iron is you're in the front, you're the bully, you're the juggernaut. The Laughing Shadow is the one running around skirmishing, backstabbing enemies, and jumping out or teleporting out. They're all really good. Sparkling Targe is very interesting. Sparkling Targe is based on using a shield. You get extra benefits. You actually apply your shield's circumstance bonus to your AC to saves against magic and magical effects. It's a really good effect, and not only that, but your shield gains an additional bonus to its hardness based on your whatever bonus your Arcane Cascade does, up to an additional +3 to its hardness. It's really good. And not only that, but this also applies to the use of the shield spell, which I find that the shield spell can be a little underwhelming sometimes. It's mostly used for its +1 bonus. So anything that makes the shield more interesting is even better. And the fact that this stance increases your even your shield spell's hardness, I think is a really good and interesting change overall to how one might approach a combat situation. And because the style is based on using a shield, this is much more of a stalwart, kind of self-sufficient character on the battlefield. They have a lot of conflict spells and feats based on increasing their sturdiness, getting their shield out faster. They get an emergency shield ability where they can either raise their shield or cast the shield spell as a reaction. They also get shield block as an additional free feat, which If you've seen any of my videos, you know how much I love shield block and how great of a feat it is to get for free as a part of your class's kit. And it's a really, really good feat. I honestly think that Sparkling Targe is a very strong and very durable style to play Magus, especially because your hits are innately doing more damage with your spell strike. So Sparkling Targe is really cool. Starlight Span, a very interesting one. It allows you to use Spell Strike with ranged weapons. It has to be within the ranged weapon or ranged unarmed strike within their first increment. But you can Spell Strike even if it goes beyond the spell's initial range. This makes a longbow-based Starlight Span Magus incredibly interesting. And it kind of has that green arrow style trick arrow shots. A lot of their conflict spells and feats are based around removing enemy cover, ignoring concealed bonuses, increasing their accuracy, or doing enhancing the actual strikes with their ranged spell strikes. It's really, really good. It's very interesting, and again, a very, very different playstyle than any of the other hybrid studies. It's really solid. It's really good. I really like Starlit. I like them all. Okay. I really like them all. They're just all really, really unique. And actually, this video is going to be a little bit long, but oh well. We're going to get to my favorite hybrid study, which is Twisting Tree. Twisting Tree is very much what I always wanted, which is a Magus that uses their spell staff as a weapon. This one's even better because you can make your staff a one-handed weapon that's a D6 and it's agile. It's really solid. Or you can use it in two hands. It goes to a D4 and it extends and it gets the reach parry and what was the other one? The other one is trip. It gets trip as well, meaning that your character is going to be very versatile, very capable of handling a lot of styles. A lot of the conflict spells and feats for Twisting Tree make your staff weapon even better, either enhancing its weapon-like qualities or making it even better at like striking enemies at reach. Having a very like Sun Wukong, style, fighting style in the Magus, I find it super interesting. And I see we're getting already here late in the video, so I'm not going to get too much more into the hybrid studies. Let's just get to some of the feats, shall we? The first feat I really wanted to talk about is Raised Tome. It's a good feat. Again, this is another thing that I really wish spellcasters had more of. This allows you to raise a spell book and use it as a shield, increasing your AC bonus as per like a normal shield. And not only that, but based on the subject of the book, say you have a book of undead, you get a bonus to recall knowledge checks based on the subject of the book. And not only that, but if you have shield block, it gets the benefits of shield block. Granted, books are really terrible shields and they don't have a lot of HP or hardness. Still, I find this really, really interesting. I love the idea of a Magus who uses a spell tome to block people while fighting them off. Sparkling Targe would be a very, very good one for that. It's really, really good. And they actually even have other feats based around this as well. There's one that you can even infuse a shield into one of your tomes to get the benefits that the shield would normally give, increasing the book's hardness and the book's overall HP. It's a really, really fun, very unique style. I find it interesting, and it's wholly unique to the Magus. I think it's really good. I honestly can't say much more than that. Fuse Staff. Now, this is actually not based on Twisting Tree. This can be helpful to all styles of Magus. At the beginning of the day, when you're charging a particular, like casting staff, you can fuse it into any kind of weapon you have, whether it's a ranged weapon or melee weapon. And what you can do after that is, as a single action, you can swap it from whatever weapon it is to the spell staff. That's really cool. That's really good. It lets the Magus have more spells, essentially, because they can cast spells through the staff. And not only that, but you can actually spell strike with the staff in weapon form using the spells in the staff, further enhancing the amount of spells you can actually spell strike with with the Magus, and also giving you a wider variety of spells to do it with as well. And not only that, but because it's based on the charges in the staff, you actually get a very good range of spells you can use with it. I think this is absolutely amazing. I think this is a feat that most Maguses should pick up or get in some fashion, because it's only a benefit. It's just straight good on any type of Magus, because you're getting extra spells, because you're getting extra spell strikes, and because it gives you that aesthetic of your staff actually matters. Whatever spell casting staff you have, it's something that's always with you and you're always using. It becomes just as important as your weapon. I think it's a really, really good feat. I was going to do a few other feats, but the video's already running kind of long, so I'm just going to end with one more, and this is probably my favorite feat of the Magus, and that's Rune Compressions. Now, it's a really good feat. It gives you an extra focus point, and it gives you the Rune Compression spell. The Rune Compression spell is really good. It's a conflict spell, which means that when you use it, it can recharge your spell strike. That's something very important to remember. And when you use it, it pretty much embeds on your weapon a rune of most of the striking varieties, flaming, thundering, all frosts, all those kind of standard extra damage runes. It means that you have access to these runes real easy. It lasts for a minute. If your weapon is already maxed out on property runes, you can actually, what it does is it suppresses one of them, and you get the benefit of that one. So you can't get an extra rune, but what the biggest benefits about it is that if an enemy has a particular weakness that you find out, you can swap to that with this, and then you can go ahead and, further mess up the enemy and exploiting those weaknesses or whatever. And not only that, but depending on your style campaign, this is a really good way to gain access to runes that could be difficult in your setting. Flaming rune, frost rune, all those runes are really good because they add extra damage to your strikes on top of what the Magus already adds on top of their strikes, making the Magus's weapon feel very magical, very impressive. And when you get to level 15, you also get access to even more runes like the Keen rune, which makes it so that you crit on a 19 and a 20, just like it has in prior editions. I think that Rune Compressions is a really, really good feat because as a focus spell, it's very solid. It makes your character very dynamic. And because you're going to be using it really early in the combat, you're going to Spell Strike, Arcane Cascade, Rune Compression, Spell Strike again, on the next turn, obviously. It's a really good setup. It lets you hopefully figure out enemy weaknesses, exploit enemy weaknesses. Sometimes it's also good for getting around resistances of what enemy is weak or resistant to the type of weapon you're using. At least the Rune Compression damage will go through typically, hopefully. Anyway, I don't know. The Magus has a bunch of tricks up their sleeve. They have a bunch of magical spells that make them very dynamic in a lot of combat situations. And not only that, but if you really understand the game, if you really get invested in how the Magus functions and you master Magus, it's a really powerful class. It gives you so many options. And while it might not be able to do as much damage as some of the other classes, while some of its feats, as far as martial is concerned, puts it a little bit behind, your versatility and utility will far surpass a lot of the other martial classes, making you a good, all-rounder and a character that's dynamic, who's focusing on, their martial abilities, and they're focusing on their magic abilities. They can be doing push-ups in the morning and writing spells in their book in the evening. It's a really good archetype. It's a really, really good class overall, and I highly recommend that you go and check it out. Either, looking in your Secrets of Magic book if you have one, or Archive of Nethys, because again, Archive of Nethys is a really good site. I use it all the time, and it just shows that Paizo really cares about the game and wants everyone to play it, even if they can't afford their books. But with that, we're going to go ahead and end for this video here today. Thank you so much for being here. I highly appreciate all the support we've been getting in a lot of our videos. We're well over past halfway now to what we need to make this channel an official channel on YouTube. where we actually can start monetizing and all that. So thank you. And if you've liked the video, please like or subscribe, or both, hopefully. If you want to see more content like this. And there's a link to our Discord down below in the description where you can join us, where we talk all things tabletop as well as things like Warhammer 40k. Also, I always recruit there first for any of the games I do for the channel. So if you want the chance to play with me and my friends, you can join us down there. But with that, we're going to go ahead and finish. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a great day and good luck in your games. Leave the bad luck to me, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.